Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here this beautiful Thursday evening. Day 4 of our householder retreat, spiritual faculties. Today is the day of samādhi. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. So a few nights ago, for the meditation, I taught this simple little mantra, just a 2-syllable mantra that is traditional to the Thai forest tradition, of which I am um, a part of. I was almost said a member of, but that didn't sound quite right. Um, and that simple mantra is Buddho, and it just means awake, sort of like Buddha means the awakened one. And it's this really beautiful way to condition the mind towards calm and ease. And so we associate it with the breath. And so the inhale is Bud, exhale is Do. And we use it whenever we begin in the meditation practice to feel contracted, or if the mind is a little busy, or the physical body begins to tense up, Bud, Do. And even a little smile can come to the face. And so all of this is creating this condition that builds over time of as soon as you hit that, it's like home base. It's like, relaxation, I'm home, I'm here. Udo. So it's how I like to practice. But it's really conducive for samadhi practice. If you don't like Buddho, maybe you say awake, wake, or some other word that you connect with. Shiva or Shakti or yoga or whatever it is that you want. Adam. Ah. Hmm. So you can just begin to settle in to our practice. And we just start with just taking a few deep breaths. Yeah, and just taking a tour of the body, just feeling through. I really like the one of the Tibetan words for meditation is gom, Gom, which just means to become familiar with. And so we're just becoming familiar with the body here and noticing the condition of the mind, the mood, the tone, and just the energy that's here in the system. You just settle the attention on the breath, just a simple in and out breath. And we really want to expand the reach of the breath. So breathing with the whole body. like the breath is moving through the entirety of the body. Like with each inhale, the whole body expands. With each exhale, the body contracts or lets go or releases. And really, the primary characteristic of the samadhi experience or practice is ease. And so allowing for an easefulness throughout the entirety of the body. Buddho. The exhale is associated with the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and relax aspect. So it might be nice to extend the exhale. This Buddho, this internal mantra echoes through the body and mind. And if the body contracts or the mind gets busy or we start telling stories, Buddho, arriving and fully in the body. Relaxed, easeful, spacious. Fusing, saturating, inhabiting the entirety of the body, every cell cleansing with breath, awareness. Udo. As we continue, breath even starts to go beyond the body. If there's any agitation or thinking, contraction of body or mind. Udo. Expand, saturate, diffuse awareness, breath, attention through the entirety of experience. Relax. And as we continue here, just noticing the condition of the heart. Has the heart been involved? And if not, get it involved. That might just be bringing attention to the space of the heart. Or it might be radiating heart quality through the entirety of the body, accompanying breath and awareness. Sense of ultimate acceptance of this moment. So we'll take about a 5-minute body break, um, and we'll keep it quiet if we can. Um, yeah, so 6:36 is 5 minutes from. All right, welcome back. So continuing on our progression through the five faculties, or the five faculties that become the five powers, or the five indriyas, as they're called in the suttas. So the first one is sada, faith or confidence. So that kind of initial spark when we start something new. And this can be anything. I think I talked about this maybe the first night. If you want to start, learning the saxophone, you get a saxophone and you like trust in that one day you might be able to play it. And so that faith keeps you going, and then first you learn how to blow into it and make a sound, and then you learn how to play a couple notes, then a scale, and then a song, and then kind of keeps going. Your faith continues to grow and your confidence continues to grow. And that can condition energy, which is the second um, uh, faculty, virya, energy or perseverance. It's this, we also call it effort. It's that sticking to something. Yeah, and so faith and energy really work together. They grow off one another. And then the third one, which John talked about last night, sati, or mindfulness. And the fourth one tonight, samadhi, which is usually translated as concentration, but we'll talk about that. And then tomorrow night, John will talk about panya, which is wisdom or discernment. Yeah. Yeah, and so mindfulness last night, just a little review. Just mindfulness is, sati is a word that's related to the word for remembering or to bringing together. Um, and what is it that we're remembering? We're remembering that we're here. That's the main thing we're remembering. That I'm here, I'm present, remembering to come back to the body. And it's based on one of the main teachings of the Buddha, and really the central teaching of the uh, Vipassana, which is the Satipatthana Sutta, which is usually translated as the four foundations of mindfulness. But I like to think of it as four frames of reference. So four things, four windows, four frames that we look through, that we work with separately to begin to bring in the whole. And so the first frame of reference is the body. So we learn to be with the body. And the Buddha had several recommendations, meditations for that. One is contemplation of the 32 parts of the body. And another one is observation of the gradual decay of a corpse, which is maybe not the most inspiring meditation, but it happens. People did that throughout the years. And then the second frame of reference is mindfulness of feeling tone, what we call Vedana is the Pali term. Vedana is kind of the undercurrent of our behavior, undercurrent of our thoughts, and that it takes the form of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And when we observe this, we see that we're usually strategizing to kind of clinging to trying to create pleasant experience. We're averting or moving away from unpleasant experience, and then just sort of ignoring neutral experience. And so if not tended to or not looked at, then that clinging to pleasant experience creates greed. And if we're not paying attention to averting negative experience or things we don't want, that creates aversion. Um, or it's also called hatred, because aversion can turn into hatred, othering. You're over there, I'm over here, we're separate. And then if not paid attention to neutral feelings, that becomes delusion. And so you might know these three things as greed, hatred, and delusion as the three poisons. So feeling tone is very important because it really conditions a lot of our behavior, our beliefs, our values. And then the third one is mindfulness of the mind. And so the mind, thoughts, mind states, moods, emotions have to do with the mind. And then the fourth one is called mindfulness of dharmas, particularly the five hindrances and the seven factors of awakening, which I won't get into now because that would take too long. But really, it's sort of where the rubber hits the road. It's where we begin to relate with life. So the first three are really the foundational practices. The fourth one is where we meet the world. And so that's the traditional teaching of sati or mindfulness. But really, mindfulness is about paying attention, just paying attention to what's here, being present. Because I don't know if you knew this or not, but being in the present is the only place you can be. And so, coming to terms with the fact that you're only present. Even if you were to get into a time machine and go into the past, you would still be present. So you can't change that. And the body's always present. The breath is always present. The breath is another thing, the technique that the Buddha taught as mindfulness of the body. So I forgot to mention that one. So we observe things as they are, as they come into our experience. And so this is really the main part of the central part of Vipassana practice. But sort of the other part of it is what we call samādhi. Or sometimes you hear it shamatha or samatha, which are really interchangeable terms. They have different roots and they mean different things, but they're very much the same. And so shamatha is the Sanskrit, samatha is the Pali. Samatha means calmly abiding, calmly abiding. So we calmly abide in an object of concentration, such as the breath or a mantra, or there's many different practices for that. I think the Buddha mentions 40 different objects for shamatha meditation. And then samadhi is typically translated as concentration, which I don't have a very good relationship with that word. So I like other translations. But really, what we just did in the meditation just now was which was a samadhi practice. That was a shamatha practice. That was a samadhi practice, which probably felt much different than concentrating. When the Buddha talked about samadhi, he told this simile of really beautiful simile, and kind of the first stage of samadhi practice is this simile called I forget exactly what it's called, but I usually just call it the Bathman Sutta, because it's talking about a public bath and the bath attendant. So he says, just as a bath man or a bathman's attendant, and you have to picture ancient days, the bathman would prepare soap for people. This is sort of an obscure image, but that maybe we're not used to. But he would prepare soap for people by having soap powder and a basin. And then he'd gradually add water to the soap powder, creating a ball. And then that would be given to the person taking a bath. And so he talks about suffusing the body with attention, awareness, just as a bathman finds the perfect balance and the right suffusion of water and bath powder. So you have to have the right amount of water, the right amount of bath powder to create the perfect ball holding it together. And then you hand it off. So that's the image that's given. If you're a baker or a cook, you can probably think of flour and water. If you want to mix it really well. You don't want any like dry pockets in there. So it's mixed really well. So that's what we're doing with our attention in samadhi practice. We're suffusing the entirety of the body, every cell with as much attention as possible. So it's not this tight, it's not a tightness. It's a suffusion, it's a relaxation, it's an ease. So I really like that image. And so people, in my experience, tend to avoid concentration practice because it's uncomfortable or it's really difficult or it takes a lot of energy. And I did that. I did it. I avoided it for years. And so this idea of samadhi as concentration practice, we have these connotations of working hard or struggle or getting it right. We clench up, we get tight. Um, you know, you can't slack. No slacking, slacker. You can't slack. And when we do this, we kind of rev up these kind of controlling systems in our life, um, like this duty, this work, this get it right. And then when we do that, stress tends to arise. So we associate concentration practice or meditation practice with stress, which is not a very good thing. Dukkha, one translation for dukkha is stress. And we don't want to create stress or dukkha through our meditation practice. We're actually we're meditating to kind of create less dukkha. I remember as a kid, I was probably told to concentrate 10,000 times. I don't know. It's probably somewhere around there. I'm being conservative when I say that. And I had um, ADHD and some other things going on, and I just couldn't sit still. I couldn't stop talking. Nothing could stimulate me, And it was like, Adam, concentrate. I heard that so much, and so hearing that word concentration. Luckily, when I started Buddhist practice, that word wasn't used. They don't use that in Zen. But when I got into the Vipassana world, they started to talk about concentration practice. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. But really, the Buddhist path, the way the Buddha talked about it, oh, wait, hang on, I messed up my computer. Was he talked about the path of shamatha or samadhi and the path of mindfulness or vipassana. They're not separate. They're together, and he likened them to two oxes pulling a cart. They both need to be fed, and eventually you kind of do both at the same time. But we can talk about that at some other point. Sometimes samadhi, and especially hear this in more kind of Vedic or Hindu context, samadhi is something to achieve, like you achieve samadhi. Like this is a state that you get to. Um, this is really funny, and I hope this person isn't listening, but I was teaching a retreat one time, and it was registration. I was doing registrations, and a student of mine, she signed up, and she wanted her husband to come, and he wanted to talk to me before he came. And he told me, he's like, I'm going to come to your retreat, but I'm going to kind of do my own thing. He's like, I've achieved samadhi, so I don't need your retreat, but I want to be there to, be with my wife. And COVID happened, so the retreat never happened. So that was kind of good because, yeah. So it's not something you achieve and then you're done. It's something you continue to do. The Buddha continued to do samadhi practice throughout his whole life. So the Buddha kept doing it. I think we're pretty safe to keep on doing it. So once you arrive, you can be assured that you haven't. Um, the Buddha also talked about, if you read the story of the Buddha, when he left the palace, he studied with two different teachers, and they were both concentration teachers. They were jhana teachers. And so if you're not familiar with the jhanas, there's four material jhanas and four what we call immaterial jhanas. And um, so you achieve these states along the way. And these two teachers one taught the seventh jhana and one taught the eighth jhana, which are the last two. And the Buddha, these are like very highly absorbed samadhi states, like the highest you can get to. And the Buddha, both teachers he studied with, eventually, the Buddha achieved these states pretty, I don't know if easily is the right word. It doesn't really say that in the suttas, but quickly. So much so that the teachers asked him to start teaching them about this practice. And he achieved these states, but it wasn't enough because he still saw suffering. He still saw a dualism there. He saw it didn't bring an end to his suffering. So just like I've been talking about, the Buddha talks about these rafts that we use to get across the river. And once we get across the river, then we move on to something else. And so that's exactly what these practices are for. Though in this life, we probably won't get off the samadhi boat. It's a practice that sustains us throughout all of our, will sustain us for a very long time. And so this effort, when we begin the practice, it can get us, we can go with it for a while, but from personal experience, it gets really, really exhausting if it's all about achievement and effort and getting something. You might get something in the short term. Long term, you're going to probably burn out. That happens really easily. And so this association with stress, this association with effort, it doesn't create the conducive conditions for awakening. It doesn't even create the conditions for continuation. You don't want to do it after a while. It's just, why do I want to do this practice? That's so makes me feel so terrible. So, we find excuses, we avoid it. But really, our practice, especially the samadhi practice, it should be comforting. It should be like home, like that Buddha. It should, I've arrived. I've heard Ajahn Sucitto he calls samadhi refreshment. It's refreshing. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it should be. Any new habit we begin is difficult in the beginning. So there is some effort that's there. That some energy, some effort that needs to be there. But eventually it becomes part of us. Yeah. It shouldn't be a continual uphill battle. And if we don't find comfort in our Dharma practice, we'll find comfort in something else, whether that's the TV or our phone, or we'll find refuge in something else. And so we really need to create the conditions around our meditation practice of ease, inspiration, refreshment. Yeah. Yeah. And so the suttas describe samadhi as union, as a gatheredness as a unification. And we can think of it as a unification of body, heart, and mind. That's how I like to think of it. Because again, if it's too heady, it becomes that's that effort. That's that strong effort. So there's an imbalance between the mind and the heart. And so we bring in the heart, and that tends to temper it a little bit. Again, Ajahn Sucitto, I borrow a lot from him. He talks really eloquently about samadhi. Um, he says, in the way the Buddha presented it, samadhi is food for the heart, and its immediate cause is happiness. Happiness born of unplugging stress. My favorite part of the suttas is, again, or one of my favorite stories of the Buddha is in the Mud in the Majjhima Nikaya, which is the middle length discourses. So those of you who've asked me about the suttas, this is one book in all of the suttas. So this is the middle length discourses. There's many others, but see how big that is. Lots of suttas out there. Um, I have it marked here, hopefully. Yes. So the Buddha studied with these teachers. He still found suffering, and then he went off with a group of Jains. They were ascetics who sort of tortured their bodies in order to transcend it. Um, and so he did that for 7 years, I think. And after 7 years of torturing his body, I mean, if you've seen any of the ascetics in India, they do pretty harsh things to themselves. And uh, his method was he teetered on the edge of starvation. That's kind of what he did. And then he had this beautiful memory. He had this really wonderful memory that I love. And it's called, he remembers being a child, and his father was kind of the king of this village, kind of the leader of this clan. And there was a festival going on. It was a plowing festival. And so he was watching his father do the festivities. And the Buddha as a child was sitting under this rose apple tree. He was just sitting there. I just want to read this. He said, I recall that when my father, the Sakya is his clan, Muni is sage. Shakyamuni means the sage of the Sakya clan. So I recall that when my father, the Sakyan, was occupied while I was sitting in the cool shade of a rose apple tree, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, I entered upon and abided in the first jhana, samādhi, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought with rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. Could that be the path to enlightenment? Then, following on that memory, came the realization this is indeed the path to enlightenment. So, you hear the Buddha talk about seclusion, and he's not talking about going off alone. He's usually talking about secluded from unwholesomeness, secluded from sense desire, secluded from something specific. Sometimes he's talking about going off alone, but usually, in the case here, he's secluded from sensual pleasures. So he wasn't indulging in sensual pleasures. He knew what that was like. Um, he wasn't indulging in unwholesome states. He was just sitting there enjoying this, and something within him welled up. This uh, this beautiful feeling. And so I love this. Could this be the path into enlightenment? This is indeed the path to enlightenment. This beautiful feeling, this enjoyment, this purity. I really love that because it's not supposed to be a struggle. And so he was in the midst of that struggle. He has this memory. And, this is when his famous saying was, might there be another way? Might there be another way? And it's at that moment, starving Buddha, Sujata, this, this little girl, came up and offered him milk rice. And milk rice at the time was sort of like ice cream now. And he took it and he ate it. He broke his fast. And his fellow compatriots, the ascetics, were like, "What are you doing? You're not on the spiritual path anymore." And he's like, "I know what I need to do. I know what I need to do." And this is how he found this. This is where he found this middle way. This middle way. He knew extremes of sensual pleasure. He knew the extremes of asceticism, and he found a place right in the middle of the two. And I really, really, really love that. Yeah, and so it's not an achievement, it's something that's already within us. And so this perception of concentration practice is really important. Um, again, this is from Ajahn Sucitto. He wrote this essay called "Samadhi is Pure Enjoyment" that I really really love. Um, it brought me out of my concentration aversion. Uh, so it's important to question our perception of concentration and our attitude towards getting it. The getting it approach doesn't work in terms of appreciation of the present, but the present is all that we can fully directly be aware of. We're directly aware of the present moment through feeling it and being affected by it. And that's not a matter of thought or a goal. It's a matter of heart. It's a matter of heart in the present. But if we're led by a work ethic that demands achievement, we lose present moment appreciation and enjoyment. We leave out the heart. And there's the mistake, because there can't be any settling and unification without feeling it in the heart. I think that's really important. And so there's no goal to achieve. The present moment is this, and it's a continuation. It's a continuation. It's a continuation. It's a continuation. And so it's all about the path. Yeah. I love this quote from Alan Watts. I just saw it today, actually. It says, "You do not play a sonata in order to reach the final chord. And if the meaning of things were simply ends, composers would write nothing but finales." I just like what it made me think of is like, getting dressed up, going to the symphony, going to the concert. You go to the hall, you sit down, the orchestra, does their tuning, and the conductor comes out. You're clapping, clapping, and then he begins, and it's just dun 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 dun, and then everybody leaves. How lame would that be? And so it's not about getting anywhere. It's about being right here, right now, and feeling the sweetness of the moment. Yeah, the fullness of the moment. And so we become absorbed and unified in that fullness, in that sweetness of the moment. But we bring in the heart. The heart is difficult. The heart can get uh, snagged in all kinds of ways. Irritability, criticism, and the heart can easily get out of touch with kindness and empathy. And if we're focused on concentration, it can get really bad because our senses get heightened. We start to hear and see everything. And I've experienced this really intensely on retreat. It used to be very bad. So every sound, every cough, every throat clearing, every squeaky chair, every page turning, every loud breather, every door that opens and closes, uh, everything. We start to hear everything. Um, it's like I used to get really very irritable, and I just had this thing in my mind. It's like, you're ruining my meditation. Like, what are you doing? Um, but I began to my strategy, and this was just intuitive, was just to start smiling when I get irritable, and it would and it would start to actually bring me joy because I would just kind of laugh at myself. It became this kind of joyful thing. Like, this is why like, they're just breathing, you know, they're just going to they're just opening the door. They're just adjusting themselves like I allow myself to do constantly. Um, so that's how I dealt with it. And we can get to a point where we almost look for faults, and sometimes we call this the vipassana vendetta. And there's usually one like culprit. Like I've experienced this on retreat. It's like there's one person who's trying to ruin your life. And then you meet them after retreat and they're the sweetest, nicest person. Yeah, I think said this before. I was on retreat recently, maybe maybe a year ago or something. And there was this guy who had brand new shoes, and he would walk out front, and it would just be like every time he would do walking meditation. I would hear it. I would hear it, and everybody else around him was just fine. They're doing their thing, but for me, I could hear it on the other side of the retreat center, and yeah, that irritable thing came up. Exactly. Yeah. And so if we don't bring in the heart, then the head heart balance is lost. I had this really kind of cantankerous philosophy teacher in college, and his favorite quote, he talked about it all the time, um, was by from Jean-Paul Sartre, and it was hell is other people. I was thinking about that today. Yeah, and so we have to balance the heart, or else we just get irritated by everything. Weather, body pain, noise, and yeah, of course other people. And so there's this purifying of the heart that we really that is part of our practice. And as we begin to purify the heart, more and more enjoyment begins to arise, and that conditions more and more practice. And so again, this is where the effort and the energy comes in, because there can be a lot to get through at first. There needs to be some, you know, some concerted effort, but then the fruits start to arise, and it begins to condition this faith. It keeps us going. And so this process, of purifying the heart, it leads to to samadhi, as the Buddha described it, as being based on what we can call right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. And samadhi is really settling in on these factors, on these qualities. And I'll talk about each of those in a moment. But one of the things that's really important that the Buddha made very clear about samadhi practice, or any of this unification practice, is that ethics really needs to come first, because you can't get unified, you can't get concentrated if your life is ethically out of balance. That's really important, because the mind, it's impossible. At least this is how the Buddha talked about it. It's impossible for the mind to settle in those conditions. So there's this kind of process, this progression from the suttas. This is from the Anguttara Nikaya, which is the connected discourses. There's another giant book. um, says, for one who keeps good moral conduct, there is no need to wish. May freedom from remorse arise in me. Bhikkhus, it is in accord with nature, which is another translation of Dharma, that one who keeps good moral conduct will experience freedom from remorse. So this continues. Um, and I just want to flag here, the Buddha was not interested in morally policing anybody. This isn't about, um, being you know, uh, a good moral person. It's more about factors that lead to awakening. Yeah. And that's the only thing the Buddha was interested in. If we cause harm to others, then it really hinders our awakening process and the awakening process of those around us, of those we hurt. And so the precepts are very central in the practice of committing to non-harming, again, not just for your own settledness, but that we create the opportunity and a field where other people feel comfortable around us, so that it better enables others to awaken as well, so they feel safe around us and protected. That's why we cultivate this. It's both for our heart, but more importantly for the hearts of those around us. And so when we think of ethics, it's not something that if we mess up, it's not like there's a Buddhist hell somewhere that we're going to go to. That's not it at all. But it does it can get us off the path to awakening, and then we just come back. It's that simple. It's not about making anybody feel bad. I just wanna make sure you understand that. Um, and so our effort and our mindfulness, the energy and the mindfulness is a lot of it's about just maintaining an integrity in terms of bodily action, in terms of words, and even in our intentions of why we do what we do. Um, and then to recognize and draw on the uplifting qualities of such conduct. And so again, creating goodness, creating wholesomeness, this all leads to awakening. And we can dwell even, how good it feels, this heart opening quality, the effect of recognizing that no creature fears or mistrusts me. Yeah. Nobody fears or mistrusts me. Yeah. It feels really good. There's this really beautiful thing that comes out of that for you and for others. And then the sutta continues on. For one who is free from remorse, there is no need to wish, may gladness arise in me. Because it is in accord with nature. So the Buddha is laying out this natural process. This isn't something he created. This is something he discovered. It is in accord with nature that in one who is free from remorse, gladness will arise. So we're encouraged to put aside other ways of thinking and dwell on feeling free from regret. So guilt, regret, it's not good. I was talking to somebody last night. I can't remember who it was, about being raised Catholic. And I don't mean to bash Catholics, but and I'm not going to bash Catholics, but because I still respect it greatly. But I remember, when I used to visit my mother at home, uh, I I didn't go to I stopped going to Catholic church when I was in eighth grade. I refused to get confirmed, and so I stopped then. But I would still go to mass with my mother when I'd go home. And at some point, I think maybe 20 years ago, they added into the confession of faith in the middle of it. You take your hand and you hit your heart and say, mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa. And I was so shocked by that, because you're looking at Jesus. You're basically saying it's my fault that Jesus is up there on the cross. Um, and I was talking about this with somebody last night, and I was thinking, the faith that keeps us going in the Buddhist practice and the energy and all these things. And then I was thinking about, my mother and some people in my family. It's really like the guilt that keeps them going. It's the fear. It's like this fear of, at least like that's how it manifested in my family. It was this constant like beating down, and of this constant like you're not good enough, and you have to constantly repent. And it was sort of this interesting moment for me last night thinking about that. And so the Buddhist path is much more gladness is like, it's like the gladness, the happiness, the sweetness, the sukha, the present. It's about conditioning ourselves to be motivated by the positive, good fruits that come out of doing this practice. Yeah. So gladness will arise. So free from regret. And this again, when we don't have this, when we're being ethical, we don't have anything to regret, and this affects our bodily tension and the restlessness. Um, if you've ever, seen a kid who's like obviously lying and they're like fidgety and like, I thought I was such a good liar when I was a kid. Like that's the quality, or even us, if we're, if we're telling something that we know is not true, like it manifests in the body as like tension or fidgetiness or something. It's difficult to relax and when you're in a web of lies. Um, and so when we don't have that regret, or we don't have those burdens of trying to keep up all those stories or all this bad behavior, then that creates even more calm and settledness. For those whose body is calm, there is no need to wish, may I feel rapture. So rapture is the term, the Pali term is piti. So it's this sort of energetic uh, joy that comes, rapture. It's joy. And so lack of regret, calm, joy naturally arises. And this is what really the fuel of samadhi. It's this buoyant, uplifted energy. And for one who is rapturous, there is no need to wish, may I feel at ease. The sense of feeling ease is the final condition for samadhi, because the joy makes us feel at ease, and then samadhi happens. And it says, because it is in accord with nature that the mind of one at ease is unified. So the ease creates the unification. And so it says, thus, because one stage flows into the next stage, one stage fills up the next stage for going from the near shore to the far shore. So these naturally build on one another. And so we don't have to make the intention like, may I achieve samadhi. We just allow it to naturally unfold as we purify the heart and the ethical, like this all happens very naturally. If we're able to settle in an ethical behavior, then we don't have the regret, and the regret creates ease and joy and all of the qualities for samadhi. So it's all about relaxation, calm, and ease. That creates the unification. Yeah. Oh my, I can keep going on and on here. But I think that's probably an okay place to stop, right? Um, I'll just finish with this. So for samadhi, we don't need any more effort than this to uh, gentle our attitude, to widen and deepen our intention, and to just keep going. That's all we need. Thank you. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your practice. And I would like, well, maybe we have time for one question or two. Yes, Charlotte. Oh, need the mic, sorry.
Hold on a second. Who had a question?
Charlotte.
Oh, Charlotte.
Um, I really enjoy your presentation.
Oh, thank you.
So there's three things I'd like you to clarify. What's the relationship between awakening, samadhi, and enlightenment?
Okay. Awakening, samadhi, and enlightenment. So I would say awakening and enlightenment are the same thing. Samadhi creates the conditions for that to happen. So the samadhi calms the mind, creates a stillness in the mind, so that then we're better able to see into the mind. So insight meditation or vipassana practice is all about seeing into, but it's difficult to see into if the mind is very scattered. it's difficult to differentiate all those things. And so we create samadhi, we create a sense of calm and ease in the mind, and then the things arise and we can see them, we can work with them. And then that insight creates the conditions for awakening. So there can be big A awakening and small A awakening. And so I feel like every time there's an insight, there is an awakening. You've probably all experienced that. Maybe you're more awake right now than you were a year ago, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago. You're more awake to life. And so there's that progressive awakening. And so there's this gradual awakening, but waking up, or the big A awakening, I would say, is just like an enlightenment. But you could also have little enlightenments too. It's the same kind of thing. Just like these little awakenings over and over and over again. I think samadhi is mistook for enlightenment a lot of times. Like this person I was talking about, because it's beautiful. It's amazing. It's filled with light and all the things that you want in a spiritual experience. But it doesn't relieve the suffering. It's a great state, and it's beautiful, but it's not it yet. At least that's how the Buddha taught it. Yeah. Is that helpful? Okay. Thank you. Great. It's probably time for announcements. Or yeah, is there a question online? Yeah.
For those of you on, for those of you on Zoom, does anyone have a question? It looks like, oh, we have a question online. Nicholas, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Adam.
Hi, Nicholas.
A short question about the relation of this gatherness, samadhi seen as unification, and collectiveness, gathering basically our inner world, our resources, putting them in order. You were saying, if you don't mind to talk a little about that, if I understood you correctly, a restlessness and lack of moral commitment are creating the opposite effect of this calm abiding, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, it seems that restlessness and lack of moral, how is it called, guideline, thread through life, like using a moral compass, basically, with consistency, seem not only to bring us farther from samadhi, but to create inner fragmentation. And this is one thing that it seems to me is connected to delusion and our modern programming. Modern man does not realize that we are fragmented. It's like they say in the Bible, the name of man is legion. Modern man thinks that there is just one piece, and if you would be willing to connect or to speak more to the relationship between fragmentation, qualities like you said tonight, restlessness and lack of moral commitment, between fragmentation and inner unity, because it seems that this inner unity is an important quality to cultivate. But at the same time, we need to recognize fragmentation, which seems to me in our time is very, very hard with the self-flattering programming that we have all received.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the lack of moral direction or an ethical ground does create unsettledness and restlessness and all of these things, and a sense of scatteredness. And as far as the Buddhist path goes, the unification is really essential on the path to awakening. Again, it's like the Buddha was very, very singular focused on awakening Like that's all he really cared about. And so mindfulness was never meant to be alone. It was always meant to be with, samadhi or samatha. They're supposed to work together. You can be unethical and be very mindful. In fact, some unethical behaviors require that you be mindful. um, but it's difficult to, you can't really become unified if you can't, if you don't have those, if you don't get in that natural flow of that lack of regret that creates ease and joy and all of those things. I don't know if I'm hitting on what you were saying, but what you're saying does ring, or what your question is, but what you're saying does ring true for me, in that uh, we're, as a society, we're very much caught up in short-term benefits, and which is bad for the long term usually. And what's good for the long term usually isn't great in the short term. And so our impatience and our scatteredness kind of just, it creates this feedback loop of just instant pleasure, which creates more and more and more and more unsettledness. Where if we play in the long game, if we want to get awakened, it kind of sucks in the short term for a while and that's why we need the effort and the energy and all of these things. But then the fruits start to come, and the short term and the long term start to line up. But does that touch on what you were speaking about?
Yes, yes, Adam, thank you very much. So what I
Thank you.
hear you saying is that even more, tonight I walk away with the understanding that the samadhi has not only to do with calmness, but also connection with a larger whole, with a larger picture. When you said flow, that seems to be to reconnect or plug us into, is like plugging a cord, into the electric whatever outlet. Basically, reconnect us with a larger flow, a deeper flow of things,
I
with a
think
larger
so.
whole.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This is fantastic.
All right. Great. So we'll just close here with a little metta, a little heart. Spirit of merit. Just bringing attention to the heart here, and perhaps a sense of joy, and just being in Sangha, being able to talk about the Dharma, and the joy of just being on the path. And if we haven't found that joy on the path, may we all find it. May we create the conditions to experience ease and calm, and may we find home in our practice. And may everyone in the Sangha and beyond find home right in this beautiful heart. And may we share that beauty with everyone we come in contact with, creating a field of safety around us so that all beings may awaken. May all sentient beings, may all beings be free from suffering and the conditions of suffering.